UCLA clearly needs an upgrade at the guard position. Whether it's Donovan Dent or these two options, UCLA has to go in the portal. And what does that mean exactly for Dylan Andrews and Sebastian Mack next year?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast. It's your team every day. Where we get started, the portal continues to get new names, new players, bigger and better numbers from Power 4 schools, mid-majors, all across the country, maybe D2 players looking to make the leap forward. UCLA, I mentioned yesterday in the last Locked On UCLA episode that Donovan Dent would be a great fit. He absolutely would. A SoCal kid, bring him back home. If you get a big enough NIL offer or close enough, maybe you could convince him to stay west. The problem is his head coach in New Mexico is now hired as a head coach at Xavier in the Big East. All right, he's going to potentially go be a Musketeer. He can go get big money elsewhere. Maybe Dent surprises everybody, goes back to New Mexico. The Bruins can't necessarily count on Dent, but he would be a great fit, and that is an absolute target. Here are two other targets the Bruins should go after. One, the former North Carolina Tar Heel, Elliot Cadeau. Cadeau was a guy who played against UCLA in that game in New York. He's a New Jersey native, so the worry is that he might go back east as opposed to coming out west, played his high school ball or finished it in Missouri. A player that had 9 points per game, 230 assists, an assist-to-turnover ratio of just over 2. 24/7 Sports listed UCLA as one of his potential landing spots. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so did Bro Report talking about, hey, UCLA is going after this guy in Elliot Cadeau. Would be a good fit, I think, for Mick Cronin. What did 24/7 Sports have to say? Cadeau, who's going to compete for his services? St. John's, all right? St. John's plays great defense. Davon Smith was playing really good for the Johnnies, the Red Storm. Then you've got UCLA, who's battling for him. Auburn, yes, the number 1 overall seed might be playing for this guy. And apparently one of his best friends, Tahad Pettiford, is one of his best friends. So maybe they might be able to peel him and bring him over to Auburn. Then there's Arizona, who's looking for the post Caleb Love guard that will be ball dominant. Creighton, who's looking for somebody after their 25-year-old, 27-year-old players, sarcasm included there, finally graduate. Tennessee, if they have to move on from Zakai Ziegler. And there might be more options, but those are where UCLA is competing. Some Big East spots, a Big 12 spot, SEC spots, of course. So if the Bruins can go get Cadeau, this is a guy who can shoot it from the field about 43%. His three-point numbers improved from one year to the other, and his assist-to-turnover ratios are on par with that of Donovan Dent, all right? Just a little bit more than 2. While the defensive numbers aren't as dominant if you go based off steals and blocks, Dent really elite. Steals, though, for Cadeau, 41, less blocks. Reading from the 24/7 Sports model, he's supposed to be an elite on-ball defender in the backcourt, which is exactly what Rick Barnes of Tennessee wants, which is why they're a contender here. And if he is that good to play defense for Tennessee, then clearly he'd be good enough for Mick Cronin's defensive needs, all right? Because if he can be an upgrade, say, over Dylan Andrews, if that's where UCLA wants to go at the starting point guard position, if they need an equally strong, physical, 6'1", 6'2" defender who can now move the basketball and shoot it just as well, if not better than what they have, and they obviously need to shoot it better, Cadeau could fit that for UCLA. Now, is he going to come west? I'm not sure. You look at that list I just mentioned to you, the only 2 places you could go west are Arizona and UCLA. Everywhere else, in terms of like, he'd stay on the East Coast, stay on that side, maybe go south to Tennessee or stay in the SEC. You know, maybe that's where he's going to go. I'm not entirely sure, but for the Bruins, here's another option already on the West Coast, mid-major, Big West. And hey, the Big West was pretty good this year in terms of conferences in the mid-major basketball. They had UC San Diego, UC Irvine still in the NIT, UC Riverside's Barrington Hargress, a sneaky guy that also passes the basketball quite a bit. He is in that same area of assist-to-turnover ratio with Cadeau, Donovan Dent, and Barrington Hargress, one of the top 100 players in the country, right around there at assist-to-turnover ratio. Because he needed to score a lot of points for the Highlanders of UC Riverside out of the Big West, his assist numbers are way down, but his turnover numbers aren't as much as, say, Donovan Dent's were or Elliot Cadeau's. They were significantly less. And this is for a guy in Barrington Hargress who has right now as a redshirt sophomore, so still 2 years of eligibility, averaged 20 points per game in his sophomore campaign. In his freshman year, averaged just over 12 and has started a combined 64 games for a UC Riverside team that made the NIT, competed, beat some of the best teams in the Big West, including some that either competed for a Big West championship or made it to the NCAA tournament. And UC San Diego had some of the best guards in that conference and in mid-major basketball. So if UC Riverside and you see Barrington Hargress, that's a guy that can go out there, averaged about a steal per game, mixed in with some solid passing numbers, shooting numbers improved, not an elite three-point shooting guy, but a little bit better than Sebastian Mack. Seems a lot better than, as a better scorer than Dylan Andrews. Those are two players, two contenders that UCLA could go after. I think Hargress, if he's somebody UCLA wants to go after, that would be a much cheaper option for the Bruins to contend with. Cadeau, you think about maybe where his head's at location-wise. You think maybe he wants to stay east. Maybe somebody else wants to pay him more money. That could be something else. But Cadeau, I think, would fit UCLA. You bring in Hargress, be a cheaper option, already in SoCal, a third-year guard who would be heading into his fourth season of college basketball with still next year and a senior year to work with. And maybe just maybe the NCAA adds a fifth year of eligibility so you could have super seniors. Who knows? Hargress, I think would be a cheaper option potentially, most likely, than Cadeau. But if UCLA is going to go this heavy into recruiting guards, or is already reportedly this heavily interested, obviously, in Dent, in Cadeau, maybe they take a flyer on Hargress or not, right? If they're this interested in players in the guard, in the backcourt, then next thing you know, what are they going to do with Dylan Andrews? All right. Now, there is no reports as to what could happen, but which one of those guys improved from year to year? Who's likely to stay? Who will see a significant reduction in playing time? And will that cause them to leave? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trade, SupplyHouse. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, SupplyHouse is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 plus parts to over 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros wanting that extra edge, there's a free Trade Master program with exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking their advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use the code SH and the number 5, SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, cruising on to the second segment. What did all this mean, right? What does all of this transfer portal chatter, if you will, mean for the UCLA guards in the backcourt? We already have seen Devin Williams hit the portal. We have seen now William Kyle hit the portal on the opening day. Does that mean if UCLA lands a big-name backcourt player, they already are going to need somebody in the front court? If they need somebody in the backcourt, where are they going to go? And I'm assuming this is already with the assumption, not with any insight, but just from clearly looking from the outside in, that Dominic Harris is probably going to go find somewhere else to play his final year of college basketball, or maybe he goes pro. I'm not sure. Maybe he finishes a degree of sorts. I'm assuming Dominic Harris will leave. That's my assumption. Now we go to Dylan Andrews and Sebastian Mack. Let's take a look at who grew from year to year and who didn't. Okay, let's start with Dylan Andrews. Many of the fans have come out and said, we're done with Dylan Andrews. This is a guy that has fought for playing time in his freshman year, played 10 minutes per game, averaged a couple of points per game. His sophomore year, somewhat of a breakout. Had to be the starting point guard, take over for Tiger Campbell. Did battle with some cramps, missed a couple of games, but battled and found himself as a much needed scorer for UCLA and a team that missed the tournament. Led the team in scoring with just under 13 points per game. Now, what was expected to be the hope, I think Dylan Andrews preseason said 50, 40, 90, right? 50% from the field, 40% from three, 90% from the free throw line. Let's go over that and think, okay, what was he going with? This year started the majority of the games, 29 of the 32 he played 11 less minutes on average, 10 to 11 on average than his previous season. Well, with UCLA not needing to lean on him, maybe that was expected, but a significant slash in his playing time. His shooting numbers in his career have gotten worse. From his freshman year, he shot 43% down to 39%, and this year shot 37% with a lot less shots, okay? So with more shots than his freshman year, but still enough to give him a good amount of shooting, his numbers from the field actually got much worse. His three-point shooting numbers, much reduced, slightly better at 32%, 32.7%, improving on his 32.4%, where his freshman year, he was a 31.7%. So basically, if you're really sitting there, you're listening, you're watching, you're like, what are these numbers? Incremental, gradual growth, all right? Small margins that he's improving on the three-point shot. What I think was concerning in this season was the fact that he didn't get to the line as much. He played more than twice as many minutes as he did as a freshman and got to the free throw line just as much as he did as a freshman. 23 free throw attempts as a ball-dominant guard, where, of course, if Sebastian Mack's in the game, he's going to get to the free throw line. The emphasis is somebody give the ball to a Daimata. But what I saw last year, even though he's not a volume free throw shooter, Andrews got to the line and shot it 80+%. This year, like some of the Bruins did, struggled in clutch time, struggled in crunch time, and didn't get to the free throw line. 50 less free throw attempts. Steals were a little bit less, turnovers a little bit less, but that's with a lot less minutes, and his assist numbers went down. Well, Kobe Johnson's a good passer. Sky Clark had the ball a bit more, so expected, but his assists per game were still right around his average in his sophomore year. The problem is the leading scorer for UCLA from one season went from not first to second, third, fourth, or fifth, dropped down to sixth in scoring behind Sky Clark, Sebastian Mack, Kobe Johnson, Eric Daly Jr., and Tyler Bilodeau. Okay. Now, if Daimata got a lot more time, he would have been ahead of Dylan Andrews. Now, I wouldn't say he was a number one scoring option. And I've already said on this podcast, I don't want to see him leave. I don't want to force him out. He's one of those rare guys that could play 4 years in a Mick Cronin system and hopefully with some determination can come out there and grow into a great senior leader, whether his role turns into a Lazar Stefanovic's role, where it's much reduced, but it's high energy, high efficiency. And if he can take that role and run with it, I love to see him go with it. Maybe he comes out and he's one of the surprise players next season, but the numbers aren't really adding up to what happened from a freshman year to a sophomore season to a junior season. Maybe there's something that we don't know, and I don't really want to advocate for him to leave at this point. But if UCLA does go get somebody, maybe it's Hargress, maybe they shell out the NIL dollars for Donovan Dent. I think Cronin might lean more Sebastian Mack. No, I could be wrong there. Dylan Andrews, yes, the veteran, if he is willing to accept a much lesser role, while he's still battling time with Trent Perry, you got to convince a couple of these guys to stay. You don't want to replace all of them. If you're expecting a Harris to leave, you're already seeing 2 players in the portal. What does that even mean for Eric Freeney coming off of a redshirt year? I could see the writing on the wall where, yes, obviously Dylan Andrews might be sent packing. There's no thing that I know for sure. And I think the thing that would lean Cronin to keep him, a 4-year player who's played in your system in a day and age where these guys go play 5 places in 6 years, a la, say, Devin Askew, right? He's a guy who started in the Pac-12 or wherever, and wherever he started, played like 10. He's playing 10 years, 10 schools, right? Super exaggeration. A lot of these guys, even Sky Clark, Cronin loves him. He talks about, okay, he's went here, but even Clark commit one place, started another place in Illinois, Louisville, then finally went to UCLA. Seems like a great fit in the UCLA locker room, but it's not Dylan Andrews, who's been there through Pac-12 tournament, falling out of the tournament, or Pac-12 champion, falling out of the tournament, in the tournament, and going back and forth, right? He's been there, and that's what the value Andrews brings beyond the numbers. Yet if the Bruins do go after somebody else, you can see just how much he's fallen off a little bit. There has to be either an off-season regimen that just grows, and Cronin has to find the basketball whisperer to say, hey, we're confident in you. We've seen it before. Because we can't say we've never seen Dylan Andrews blossom and flash onto the scene. He did. He really played well in good chunks of his sophomore campaign. But it's the difference when you're not the only one with the ball, and then you get more and maybe better players shooting-wise than what Andrews provides. What Andrews needs to get down is that 1-2 dribble, quick pull-up, and mid-range jumper. All right? The 1-2, pop the mid-range J, and knock it down. All right? That is his bread and butter. Mix in a layup, mix in a couple of threes. And if you do that, while maybe sometimes playing senior year like Lazar Stefanovic minutes, I think Cronin would take it. And if Andrews is okay with that, he would take that as well. But if UCLA is going to go out there and get 2 or 3 guys, that might say he might need to go packing. I don't want him to. A 4-year player staying at one school and some depth, I would love for that kid to stay. I would love for Andrews to stay. It's just a matter of if they're already interested in 2 to 3 guys, he is not going to be an everyday starter next season, potentially. Now, there might be some more shocking transfers out, but at this moment, Clark expected to return. Nobody else has said anything otherwise, and there's still a lot to go. Let's take a look at Sebastian Mack now. I talk a lot about Dylan Andrews. Sebastian Mack, who was pretty much the leading scorer in his freshman year and then had a significant decline in his efficiency and his numbers at the end of the season, mixed with a pretty bad toe injury, and he fell just behind Dylan Andrews in the scoring leaderboard for UCLA in his freshman campaign. This year, his numbers did go down, but instead of starting 30 games, he was the 6th man, played only 6 less minutes per game, and actually his numbers got much better. His shooting numbers improved while he took a lot less shots with less minutes, did a lot more. 3-point numbers, almost hit the same amount of threes, shot it with a much better percentage. In year 1 for Sebastian Mack, 28% 3-point shooter. Now, it could get red hot, but those numbers went up by a little bit, right? 28% to 31%. Just in 1 year, with limiting the usage, limiting the shots, and taking more higher percentage and working on that shot, we saw a much better Sebastian Mack from 3, in my mind. His free throw numbers got there a little less, but actually shot it much better than his freshman campaign, 72% to 74%. Rebounding a little less, but then UCLA has a lot more bigs this year, theoretically. Assists per game went up. Steals not as much, and Sebastian Mack clearly needs to improve defensively and on the consistency side for the defensive things, right? Otherwise, Cronin doesn't want to start him, and he's a guy that is as physical as it gets, will fight through contact, and while the Mack attack is predictable, if UCLA could drop plays and do things that it's not just Sebastian Mack in the second half of games dribbling with the head full of steam north and south, sometimes east and west before it gets north and south, then maybe UCLA can look at something different in the next season. But the Mack attack's not bad. It is successful. His shooting did improve, and with that type of improvement, you would hope it gets better. All right? Now, Dylan Andrews went from limited usage to a lot of usage to a little less, but still starting in every game almost. Sebastian Mack went from big-time role, injury too at the end of the year, to a different role and still flourished. That's a guy I think you'd really want to keep around and play and not have him leave. Now, if you get guys who can shoot the basketball really well, are elite defensively, you can combine Dylan Andrews' defense mixed with Sebastian Mack's grittiness and just tenacity, and you kind of bring in a mixture of those two players into one, then that would be a pretty perfect Mick Cronin player. But you got just 2 guys who aren't the best of shooters efficiency-wise, have the basketball in their hands, and aren't perfect on both sides of the ball. And those are 2 guys that Mick Cronin's got to decide who's going to stay, who is going to grow. He's got to predict that in the future while saying, maybe you need a lesser role, and maybe we need you to do similar things but get better shooting to Sebastian Mack, where his numbers going from 12 points per game to 9 points per game, almost 10 points per game. Still, I like Mack did improve from year to year. Now, there are still some things he must improve heading to his junior season. And Dylan Andrews, if he is willing, in my mind, to accept a lesser role or immediately get to work in the offseason and surprise everybody, I would love to keep him around. But if they're already going after guys, who knows? Today, though, is the anniversary, March 26th, the anniversary of arguably the best individual performance in a national championship game ever. In any championship game performances, this is one of the best. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the big redhead. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. You ever sit there and you're checking your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? And you're like, oh, dining out, online shopping, entertainment. Oh, I lost track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just one of those budgeting apps. No. Monarch Money is complete financial command center. It tracks all the accounts, investments, spending. So you're not just managing your money. You're like, okay, I do this. No, you're building your wealth. And when you start using Monarch Money, you're like, wait a minute. I spent so much on what food delivery service? And now you can budget smarter and save more money, and you can have easy collaboration, whether it's between you and your partner, that is smoother than ever. Set goals, shared personal accounts, and stay on the same page without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we're wrapping up today's show with a Way Back Wednesday. We're going to a blast to the past because why not? It's March 26th, the 52nd anniversary of Bill Walton and his fantastic national championship game performance against Memphis State. Of course, now the Memphis Tigers, but then Memphis State. John Wooden with one of the greatest runs in all of college basketball. The Bruins are in the midst of the most dominant era of college basketball programs ever completed. And this was when UCLA was still on their way in the long, undefeated, unbeaten run, beats Memphis State, a game that was actually tied at the half. 1973, March 26, the Bruins, then a part of the Pac-8. They won it 87-66 over Memphis State. The Bruins tied 39-39 at the break, playing it at St. Louis Arena. And the next thing you know, a second half of dominance. This is a game where, of course, Bill Walton, 44 points, 21 of 22 shooting, was as dominant as it gets, and the Bruins were playing really well in this championship game. Really well. But the story, as it always has been told, was Bill Walton and his utter dominance. Arguably the most perfect championship game you could have ever played by an individual standpoint. Even John Wooden, I think the rumors he told, man, I thought you were one of the best basketball players ever until you missed that one shot. What's crazy, though, is Walton had to leave that game early with injury. All right, he had to leave that game. UCLA is still well in hand of victory. Had to leave that early, so he still could have got 50 points. And from what I'm reading, if that's correct, because they still had the ban on dunking, remember, for a long time, the NCAA, it was a ban on dunking. You couldn't dunk because otherwise you'd have been too dominant. Can you imagine March Madness, the NCAA tournament, college basketball now? See some of those dunks by, well, I forget who the Alabama player was. Those reverse alley-oops? Come on. Those are some of the best highlights. And he couldn't dunk. So he's doing this with moves, laying it up and in because he couldn't dunk. And I think from what I read, 4 separate shots, if this is correct, were turned away. They're overruled, overturned because of offensive goaltending because he was so dominant. So he could have had 50-plus points if he wasn't hurt, 50-plus points if they didn't overturn some offensive goaltending where he made some shots. So maybe he could have put up close to 60 points. He could have put 50-plus, 56, maybe 60 points if he put some of those points back on the scoreboard. Okay? In an era where they had banned dunking, he couldn't do it. Offensive goaltending, crazy. Utter dominance from Bill Walton in an era that was unlike any other. And remember, they couldn't really play as freshmen. He was so dominant. And then, yes, he went on, eventually Bill Walton, to go to the NBA, win a couple of titles, battled through all the injuries, and become one of the more entertaining broadcasters of all time, and lived his life as beloved as he was. The Bruins had a celebration of life during the Ohio State game. You see the colorful tie-dye t-shirts, his love for music, what was it, the Grateful Dead, everything. But today, 52 years ago, I suggest if you can go find some highlights, if you can go read about it. I know Ben Bolch has a book called 100 Things You Should Know as a UCLA Fan Before You Die, right? You should go check it out, read about it, and be informed about, hey, when you see these people arguing on social media, UCLA was the standard and should be the standard. And Bill Walton, at the time, Lou Alcindor, now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, set a standard for greatness, for best post players. All right? You've seen some UCLA fans putting Lauren Betts on a pedestal of, hey, she is up there with the best centers in UCLA basketball history. But to complete that statement, you've got to have some of the best tournament runs and win a national championship, if not two, if not back-to-back, to get up there. All right? UCLA needs some centers. They used to be dominant back in the day. Bill Walton, with that performance, broke the Gail Goodrich record of 42 points, and that's with him scoring 44, losing some shots that he made due to some offensive goaltending calls, and getting hurt and leaving early in that game. All right, 52 years ago today. We won't forget the big redhead. Bill Walton, misses broadcast. I always loved it when UCLA would play Arizona or whoever was the Conference of Champions. You love the spirit of Bill Walton. We miss him every day, and a fantastic performance that shall never be forgotten and should not be on this day, March 26th, when we're posting this podcast. So go back, listen, watch, find any tape you can, whether it's old black and white footage, slow motion, that doesn't tell you the story of how dominant he was, but just try to envision that level of dominance in today's game when he couldn't even dunk the basketball, when he couldn't even do all these things, okay? That's how dominant he was, okay? So we'll talk about all the UCLA portal additions, needs, and everything on Locked On UCLA in future episodes. So let's get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.